Hey, Raymond here from the Beginner Photography Podcast, and I've had the Fuji x100v for 2 months now. I've shot just about 2,300 photos. That's about a roll of film per day. Now that may seem like a lot, but I'll get to that in a bit. Some of my opinions have changed since my initial review, and I've also discovered some new things about my own shooting style. So, after 2 months, can I still recommend the Fuji x100v? Let's get into it. First thing, I want to give an autofocus update. Autofocus is, once again, something that everybody talks about, everybody thinks about, and I can tell you that with the Fuji x100v, it's no longer something that I even think about. Now, I don't shoot a lot of fast-moving subjects. I don't shoot sports. I don't shoot, the way that I photograph my kids, and maybe my shooting style has changed just because I came from the Fuji x70, which had a very slow autofocus system. You really had to put yourself in a situation to be ready when something happened in front of your camera. And again, maybe it's because of that my shooting style has changed a bit. But I've never had to worry about the autofocus on the x100v so far. And I've shot in very low light situations. To be honest, I can't imagine what they're going to do in future firmware updates for the camera because it's already great. Real quick, before we go any further, if you decide that the Fuji x100v is right for you, I have some affiliate links down in the description below, and that if you do decide to pick it up, it really does help the channel, and it also lets me know that you're listening. Now let's talk about the tilty screen. Now I had some words about the tilty screen in my last review, which was simply that it was just so different than the x70 and I had become so accustomed to using the x70 that because the tilty screen is flush mount with the camera, it's not as easy to get out and put back and use as it was on the x70. But one thing that I have come to notice after 2,300 photos or so is that with the Fuji x70, I was forced to use the tilty screen because there was no viewfinder. There was no other option. You had to use the tilt screen. Whereas with the x100v, I have different options. I have a viewfinder. And quite frankly, I really enjoy using the viewfinder. With the Fuji x100v, because there's an optical and electronic viewfinder that I can use, I tend to be more intentional with my photos. When you're just looking at the back of a screen, especially in broad daylight and stuff, sometimes it's hard to get an accurate representation of the exposure or even your composition if there's a glare on the screen. Whereas when you're using the viewfinder right here, you can be more precise. You can take that time to actually make sure that your composition is right and that your exposure is right as well. And in turn, I feel as if I'm taking more intentional photos. And I have to thank the optical viewfinder for that. Also, I haven't had any overheating issues. I haven't had anything like that. However, it has not been hot here. It has not been humid here. I have not been taking thousands and thousands of photos at a time. And I also have not been taking long 4K clips. So, I haven't had any issues. However, I have had the grind. I do have this. And to tell you the truth, I think that it's gotten better since I first got the camera. It's slowly been going away. But to be honest, it doesn't really bother me that much. In fact, I don't know, I kind of like it. But maybe I'm weird, I don't know. Now, one thing that I didn't talk about in my initial review is the ND filter. I had the original X100, I had the X100T as well. They both had built-in neutral density filters. And I found that I was only using them purely for exposure. And it was fine in those senses. I mean, it worked, and it worked well. But I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. But there's something about the 100V here that, to me, makes the neutral density filter feel less about exposure and more about creativity. I'm able to do more slow shutter shots of the kids running and introducing more movement into my photos. And it kind of pushes me. It makes me think of what can I do different in this situation if I was using an ND filter. And that's cool. That brings that joy back into photography. It gets you thinking just in a different direction than you traditionally would. So like I said, this is definitely more of a tool for creativity rather than just exposure. So update on Classic Negative. Classic Negative is one of those film simulations that in the beginning I was really excited to use it. It was something new, it was something different, and it produced really, really pleasing photos in only certain situations, right? When whatever your main subject was one of the primary colors, it tends to desaturate kind of everything else, and it gives you just a photo that is unique. But I don't find it useful in everyday situations. I still find classic chrome more useful for that. But what is interesting is that the photos that I did take in classic negative, the photos that I like a lot. If the scene lends itself to classic negative, maybe I'll switch it to classic negative. Another thing that I didn't talk about in my initial review is the lack of a UHS 2 card slot in the X100V. So I'm not sure if this decision was purely based on price for Fuji or because the memory card slot is right next to the battery rather than having its own compartment as like it does on the X-T3 or Pro 2. But after having shot about 2,300 photos or so, I've realized that I don't really miss it that much, and I've realized that using the UHS 2 cards for me isn't about shooting faster, it's about dumping my cards faster. So when you come home from a wedding and you have thousands and thousands of images, it's nice to be able to dump them as fast as possible, because usually it's late and I just want to get to bed, but I want them to back up overnight while I'm sleeping. So I can still use it, which is good, and it really hasn't affected my shooting style, which is obviously even better. With past cameras, I've never been one to customize, the quick settings menu. I've never been one to customize anything about the cameras, really. The only things that I adjust are my shutter speed, aperture, ISO, white balance, and then sometimes my my focus settings. But there's something about the X100V that, I don't know, it invites me to learn more about the camera, to dive deep into the menu system, to really figure this thing out inside and out. Just begging me to make this camera the best camera for me. Not you, or you, or you, and you, but me. Me. And I gotta tell you, there is just so much joy that I get from being able to change something small, like the autofocus mode, or my film simulation, or even something like flash compensation, or even the brightness on the back of the screen with just a single press of a button. And yet at the same time, it is as essential and bare bones of a camera as you could possibly want. I really do think that Fuji hit the nail on the head when it came to making a camera for purists, as well as making a camera for those who, maybe want a little bit more new technology in their cameras. The camera just asks to be held. It asks to be pushed to the limits. It asks to go with you wherever you go. And after 2 months, I'm happy to do just that. So earlier, when I said that I've been shooting about the equivalent of a roll of film every day, it's not from overshooting. It's from wanting to use the camera to shoot new things in a new way. Things that I would have maybe just looked at before and not even bothered to take out the camera. So thanks to the Fuji X100V, I'm taking photos that I've never taken before. Do you have a Fuji X100V? Leave a comment and let me know if you feel the same way. There's something about this camera that feels entirely new, something that feels different. And I've had the original Fuji X100, the X100T, and they're good cameras. They're fine cameras. They're fun cameras. But there's something about the V that just begs to be used more. Do you feel that same way? Again, I can't put my finger on it, but I would love to know what your favorite thing about your Fuji X100V is. Leave a comment below. So again, if this video helped you decide that the Fuji X100V is right for you, I cannot tell you how much I would appreciate it if you used the links in the description below to pick one up for yourself. If you have any questions about the Fuji X100V or the Fuji ecosystem at all, I would be more than happy to help. Just leave a comment below with your question. I'll get back to you. So that is it. That is my 2-month review of the Fuji X100V. I'm truly excited to see where this thing goes in the future. All right, that's it. I'll see you soon.